Hello and welcome to our webcast for March 1st, 2019. My name is Christian Lebré and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
And is also joining us just here. This is Taylor Hyatt, our policy analysis and outreach coordinator.
Hi.
Welcome. Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our allies. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability rights opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and other ending of life practices that discriminates against people with disabilities. Today's topics: the Disability Day of Mourning. It's a little bit sad, okay? Second one, update on the Cadotte case. The third one, remembering Carrie-Ann Lucas and Katherine Araniello. Amy Asbrook will help us through those subjects.
Yep. Okay, so today's a pretty sad day.
Yeah.
Every year on March 1st, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, or ASAN, Not Dead Yet, and other organizations hold vigils for the Disability Day of Mourning to remember and honor disabled people who have been killed by their parents, relatives, or caregivers. The Day of Mourning website lists more than 1,000 disabled people who've been killed by caregivers, including 650 people killed over the past 5 years. The reason we have so many more recently is because there's more media coverage and we have better search tools to find the information.
Internet.
Yeah, the internet, basically. But it's still a lot of people. Legal authorities and mainstream media often attribute these deaths to the quote-unquote hardships faced by loved ones who, which are blamed on the person's disabilities. The public's sympathy is directed toward the non-disabled caregiver rather than the disabled person who died. The Day of Mourning is meant to put the focus back on the disabled person, to counteract the apathy of the legal system and the media, and to remind the public that the deaths of disabled people are not acceptable losses.
It must not be acceptable.
Right, but as we've seen, we know in Quebec, there are people who've been euthanized that were not eligible and nobody's done anything, so.
Yeah, no inquiry, no nothing.
Right. Given Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet's focus on life-ending measures that have an excessive impact on disabled people, we thought we'd talk about the differences between public reactions to assisted suicide versus when disabled people are killed by loved ones. So first we need to talk, of course, about the tragedy that is always talked about. Murders of disabled people are described by the media as tragedies for the desperate caregivers rather than the person who lost their life. News accounts quote neighbors and friends who express relief that the caregiver is freed from the tremendous burden and responsibility for caring for the disabled charge.
They doesn't see that the people who do care for people disabled doesn't have any support most of the time, right. No income, no nothing, and at the end it's kind of eerie most of the time.
Right.
But the solution is to give support,
right.
Not to kill the people.
Right, exactly, and that's one thing that our society hasn't quite yet figured out, that people need support to live independently and to be able to make their own decisions rather than being forced to, rather than their family members being forced. And one of the situations we talked about when I was at the Independent Living Center was a woman whose teenage son had to provide personal care for her. And that was not a very healthy situation because if he had to change her tampon or, other very personal care. That was in French, they say aidant naturel, natural helpers, but that's not a very natural situation.
Nope.
No. In the case of assisted suicide, the tragedy is the illness or disability that ruins a person's life or cuts it short. Whether or not the person has physical pain, they suffer with a disability. Upon becoming disabled, a person is no longer perceived to be fully themselves. Assisted suicides aren't thought of as tragedies because the person got what they asked for.
And when I wrote fully themselves, maybe I wasn't specific enough. Sometimes they look at a person as nothing more than a condition to be fixed. I get the impression that some non-disabled people imagine us thinking about nothing but our conditions.
Right.
We can't be friends or employees or partners or comedians or musicians or anything else.
Right. Well, that's called projection.
Yeah.
And they project their views onto us.
Right.
Right. Okay. So in the limelight, because that's the other thing that these two things have in common. Perpetrators of crimes can often evade moral and legal blame and get media attention by claiming they acted out of mercy. The media respond by publishing tributes to the hardworking, stressed parents and caregivers. The person who was killed is an afterthought at best. At worst, they're regarded as a burden that has been removed from their family and society.
What other population do you have a murder on the news and the person who died is completely invisible from the equation? Either they say, oh, nothing happened here because the attention goes to the caregiver, or they say, finally, it's a good thing for the dead person that they lost their life.
Right. And what other population do the media allow the perpetrator to dictate the terms of what happened?
Yeah.
It's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Anyway, the people we hear about who die by assisted suicide have thrust themselves into the media spotlight as part of their efforts to have laws changed. If they're not already well known, like Dr. Donald Lowe, they become celebrities like Brittany Maynard in the US or Audrey Parker here in Canada. The media attention they receive focuses on the negative aspects of their condition, many of which can be lessened with the right supports and the supposed need for death because they see it as the only possible relief of their suffering.
Yeah, they prefer to kill the people instead of doing support.
Yeah. And that puts people on a certain mentality and then you can't get them out. Okay, so besides the in-person vigils to be held across Canada and the US, ASAN will sponsor a virtual vigil tonight, broadcast on YouTube. The event also has a Facebook page with links for those who are interested in learning more about the Day of Mourning. And in the text that we send out, we provided links to all of that stuff. So if you haven't seen the text, you can go to our Facebook page or our website and look at the text for today's webcast. Okay, our second subject is an update on the Cadotte case. Michel Cadotte has been found guilty of manslaughter in the 2017 killing of Jocelyne Lizotte. Monsieur Cadotte suffocated his wife with a pillow, claiming that he could no longer bear to witness her suffering with Alzheimer's disease. Upon hearing the verdict, Monsieur Cadotte stated, "I feel better. I'll mourn now." The sentencing phase of the trial will begin next week. Monsieur Cadotte's lawyer Elfriede Duclerville argued that killing was an impulsive act, and that caring for Ms. Lizotte caused an unbearable amount of depression, exhaustion, and stress for her husband. Prosecution said there was no evidence of mental illness, but that Cadotte took Lizotte's fate into his hands when she was at her most vulnerable, with full knowledge of his actions.
How do you call it in English when you hangover? He was really,
he had been drinking. He was hungover.
That is a better excuse.
And he claimed to be upset about the poor quality of care she was receiving. But, you know, usually if you're upset about a situation, you address yourself directly to the situation. So he should have complained to the nursing home about the care she was receiving. But no, he decides to kill her as the solution.
Semper Faster.
Yeah. No.
No.
And again, this is, you know, only when it's disabled people who are the victims do the people who are the perpetrators get to dictate the terms of what they did. Quebec Superior Court Justice Hélène de Salvo advised jurors to judge the act Mr. Cadotte committed, but also his state of mind at that precise moment when Miss Lizotte was killed.
If he has a psychological condition, I hope the judge takes that into account so that he can get whatever support he needs. But to me, this sounds like the judge is trying to excuse him, either with the understandable anger over having to care for her, or the depression, or the alcohol abuse.
Yep, and in fact, it's a lot like this feeling I got from reading the first Carter decision by Justice Smith in British Columbia. She was looking for any possible way to come up with a decision that she had in mind before she heard the case. And her decision was that, you know, to overturn the prohibition on assisted suicide, and gosh darn it, that's what she was going to do. Okay, our final item today is to remember two advocates who died this week. And it was really awful to have two people die that are colleagues and that we care about, that are tremendous advocates. Remembering Carrie Lucas and Katherine Araniello. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing Katherine's name properly, but Carrie-Ann Lucas was a teacher, a minister, a lawyer, and a disability rights activist. She died on February 24th at the age of 47. Her health deteriorated following the denial by her insurance company of needed medications for an infection a year ago. So this started a year ago that she got sick. The insurance company wouldn't pay $2,000 for the medication she needed. They paid for a substandard medication that didn't work and caused problems.
Yeah. For saving, let's say, anywhere between $0 to $2,000, they spend $1 million.
Right, because she ended up going in and out of the hospital. Yeah. She was really, really sick, and it cost her her life.
That's the system in US, and private insurance.
Well, it's not just the US, because their cost containment is a concern also in publicly funded insurance.
I agree.
And this kind of thing could easily happen here in Canada as well.
I agree, but less possible. But it's possible, I agree.
Yeah.
But private insurance are targeting profit, not the health care of people.
Right, exactly. Let's see. Where was I? Her health,
we left off
following the denial by her insurance company of needed medications for an infection a year ago, which caused the loss of her voice.
Directly.
Yep. Diane Coleman, not dead yet, founder and executive director called Carrie one of the sharpest minds in our movement, and that was absolutely true. Carrie founded Disabled Parents' Rights, an organization to provide advocacy and legal representation to parents with disabilities, and she herself adopted 4 disabled children. And this is such a just cursory statement about what she did. She was so talented. In addition to her activities with American Disabled for Attendant programs today, Carrie joined the board of Not Dead Yet in January of 2013. She photographed the Not Dead Yet protest at the World Federation of Right to Die Societies in September 2014 meeting in Chicago.
We was there.
We were there. And if you go to the link that's in our text, you can see pictures of us. She supported the disability community's response to the film Me Before You, which is the disability snuff film about assisted suicide, by producing a video montage accompanying Johnny Crescendo's song, Not Dead Yet. As a result of, as a resident of Colorado, she was a leader in opposing efforts to legalize assisted suicide there. She organized direct actions and testified before the state Senate's Veterans and Military Affairs Committee about the proposed bill in 2016. In her testimony, she stated, "I am a person with multiple disabilities. I have a progressive neuromuscular disease that has caused me to lose muscle function throughout my body. I have weakness in every muscle in my body, including my facial and eye muscles. My organs are affected. I have low vision, and I am very hard of hearing. I have a gastrostomy tube, and I am dependent on a ventilator to breathe. Without the vent, I don't have years to live. I don't have 6 months, 6 weeks, or even 6 days. I have hours. I have a terminal condition, very much like ALS, and I would be covered by this bill. I understand the sponsors have said this bill is not for the disabled, but respectfully, the sponsors are incorrect. This bill directly affects me, my family, and my community. If I were to become depressed, either situational depression or major depression, and this bill passes, I could go to my doctor and ask for a lethal prescription. Because I have a disability and because physicians are terrible at evaluating the quality of life of people with disabilities, I would likely be given that lethal prescription rather than be referred to mental health treatment. And if my doctor did not give me the lethal prescription, I could simply doctor shop until I found one who would. A woman in my situation, but without my disabilities, would not get a lethal prescription and would most likely encounter a vigorous effort to ensure that she did not take her own life. This is disability discrimination.
Yeah, this is obvious for us.
Yeah. Carrie also took a leadership role in the effort to save the life of 14-year-old Jerica Bolin. She pointed out the double standard of providing suicide prevention to some teenagers, but not others. You can read Not Dead Yet's tribute to her and get more information about Carrie-Ann Lucas at her blog, disabilitypride.com. And the disability community lost another stellar artist and advocate this week with the death of Katherine Araniello. Her life and art were beyond unapologetic. One friend called her a creative explosion, constantly using her art to provoke and challenge us. Katherine was an author, a performance artist, musician, filmmaker, visual artist, and pusher of envelopes. I met Katherine through her music video, Sick Bitch Blues, which is, in my humble opinion, a brilliant, dark, in-your-face affirmation of life. Some people may find Katherine's work offensive, but no one will ever find it boring.
I've been reading a lot of tributes to both of these wonderful women all week, and I was struck by Alice Wong's observation that to her, people in their 40s can be considered the wise elders of the disability community. Because of premature death and institutionalization, she says that surviving for so long is an achievement in this ableist society.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
Well, crap. I'm, at the halfway point between, say, 16 and 40. I'm not that far removed from them myself.
Right.
And
yep.
Takes my breath away to think about it.
Yes, it does. And, folks like Catherine Frazee and Diane Coleman
Yes.
are in their 60s, and they have neuromuscular diseases like Carrie-Ann Lucas had. And they are, in the words of Star Trek, going where no one has gone before. And true pioneers, both physically and in terms of the advocacy they do to try to get people to understand the importance of valuing every person. But it's a struggle, and what happened to Carrie is such a horrible example of what happens and how paying attention to the bottom line ultimately A, costs more, and B, costs more in terms of lives. Okay. If you have, if people want more information on the subjects that we discuss here, you can visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/toujours vivant, not dead yet. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can email us at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow us on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Taylor for helping us out, and thanks also to Christian.
Thank you.
We will see you next time. Bye.
Take care. Bye.